Klaus is a truly exceptional take on Santa Claus origin story, and I think it goes without saying that this is the Christmas classic that everyone should watch at least once. It's a creative, beautiful, and heartwarming story about, postal services? Honestly, if someone told me that I would fall in love with a movie about postal services, I don't think I would believe them. But hey, here we are, and I'm definitely not complaining. So the question is, what is Klaus about? The story of Klaus is fairly simple. It follows our protagonist, Jasper, a flawed, privileged, and spoiled-to-the-core son of the Royal Postmaster General, who weaponized his own incompetence to perfection in order to avoid being forced to work so that he can continue to live the luxurious and easy life provided by his father's wealth. Obviously, his father isn't too happy about having a freeloader for a child and decides to send him to the faraway town of Smirensburg, where no one sent even one letter in ages because of a feud that tore the entire community apart. He gives him 1 year to post 6,000 letters, and if he fails to do it, he will be cut off from the family fortune and forced to fend for himself. Jasper isn't too happy about this turn of events, but there's not much that can be done about, so he begrudgingly agrees. However, upon arriving in Smirensburg, he quickly discovers that it's not your ordinary town, and poor living conditions away from his silk sheets are the least of his worries. You see, it's not just that the people of this place are prejudiced and filled with hatred, no. They are actively violent and constantly trying to cause harm to each other. And Jasper finds himself right in the middle of this centuries-long conflict that prevents one part of the community from interacting with the other part. And it's not even like they have a good reason for that, because as we find out later, it's more like they hate each other out of pure principle. Jasper quickly finds out that this is not the place known for people keeping up friendly relations and sending each other letters or packages. A ferryman called Mogens and a teacher-turned-fishmonger Alva warn him that there's nothing for him to find in a place like this and that he should leave. However, Jasper can't exactly leave just yet, so he decides to stay and desperately tries to find letters, any letters, to post and deliver, eventually stumbling upon an intimidating woodsman called Klaus, who lives outside the town and has an impressive collection of handmade toys. Terrified by his imposing appearance, Jasper runs away, accidentally dropping the drawing made by a little boy that he picked up earlier. Klaus finds him and hands him the drawing, insisting that they find the boy who made it, and Jasper, still scared of the old man, reluctantly agrees to deliver a toy for the boy. The word about the mysterious toy delivery spreads, and eventually Jasper finds a bunch of children at his doorstep who think that they'll also receive a toy in exchange for a letter. Knowing that it might be his only chance to reach his goal of posting 6,000 letters, Jasper chooses to capitalize on this idea and ends up making a deal with Klaus, who agrees to give children the toys as long as it happens at night and in secret. This sets off a chain of events that leads to Alva reopening her school to teach more children how to write, and to Jasper convincing children that only those who are good and didn't misbehave can receive a toy. Soon enough, children start to do good deeds all around town, which inspires others to do the same in response to the received kindness. People are reluctant at first, but eventually being kind becomes second nature to them, and the community starts to prosper. As the centuries-long war between two familiar clans, the Krums and Ellingbones, is forgotten. The problem is, at some point Klaus's place starts running out of toys, and Jasper, still desperate to reach his goal by the end of the year, proposes that they make new ones as a special treat for the children for Christmas. Initially, Klaus disagrees, which leads to an argument between the two of them, but after delivering a gift to a little Sami girl who lives with her people in a settlement outside town, and seeing how much joy the toy brings her, he ends up opening up to Jasper and explaining that the reason why he made these toys in the first place is because he and his wife Lydia hoped to have children together. Their attempts turned out ineffective though, and his wife died from an illness, leaving Klaus alone. He agrees for one last special delivery, and he and Jasper begin to work on new toys with the help of Alva and Sami people, inspired by their kindness. Not everyone is happy with the fact that the two families are no longer fighting though, and family elders from both clans form an alliance to eliminate Klaus and Jasper for good so that things can go back to the way they were. They get in touch with Jasper's father, convincing him that his son met and even surpassed his goal, and on Christmas Eve he comes to Smirensburg to bring Jasper back home, revealing his true selfish motivations to his friends. Jasper boards the boat with his father, but upon realizing that his son doesn't seem as happy about leaving as he expected him to be, his father lets him stay in Smirensburg. After that, Jasper realizes that the elders are planning an ambush to destroy their Christmas plan and rushes to stop them. A lot of chasing happens, and then we are left to believe that the mission failed and the gifts are gone. But then it's revealed that Alva overheard the children discussing what the elders were planning and the toys were a decoy. Forgiveness happens, and with the danger gone, Klaus and Jasper deliver the real toys just in time for Christmas. Jasper stays in town and ends up marrying Alva, and he and Klaus continue to deliver presents, spreading their mission to other towns as well. On the 12th year, however, Klaus suddenly disappears, following a wisp of wind and symbolically joining his wife. According to Jasper's narration, Klaus comes back every Christmas to continue his mission to bring happiness to children and so that Jasper can meet with his old friend. So as you can see, the story isn't very complicated, and that's good. It doesn't have to be. It's a character-driven, lovely story about kindness and friendship and growth. It also does a really great job showing how legends are formed through this constant repetition and exaggeration of pretty normal occurrences. Like the scene when Jasper and Klaus crash their sleigh and it's spotted by a child who believes that it's a magical sleigh pulled by flying reindeers. It shows great attention to detail in how it explains a lot of the lore surrounding the figure of Santa that existed for ages, from the letter writing and reindeers to Santa coming through the chimney or wearing white and red costume. It has an explanation as to where these traditions originated from, and it does so in a really amusing and clever way on top of that. I really like that and had a lot of fun spotting these little moments. Klaus is a very character-driven story, so it only makes sense to talk about its characters in more detail. And I'm going to start with Jasper not only because he's the protagonist of the movie, but also because he has such a great chemistry with basically every character he interacts with. He starts the movie as this spoiled guy who will deliberately cause problems just so that no one expects anything from him, and he ends it as a full-grown man who is willing to work hard just to bring happiness to others. He grows a lot throughout the length of the movie, and what I really like is how believable his journey felt to me. It's clear that until he came to Smirensburg, he never had any meaningful connections with others. He was lazy and self-absorbed, and aside from being used to his father's wealth and making life harder for everyone, we don't really see him interacting with anyone back home in any meaningful way. He's got everything he could ask for, yes, but he seems to be a loner. So it's easy to understand why, upon seeing all the changes in town and growing close with Alva, Klaus and Margot, he decides to stay. He finally found a place where he could feel truly happy and be surrounded by supportive people who appreciate him and make him a better person. He may no longer have his silk sheets, but he's happy and he gets to be a part of something important. I know that a lot of people compare him to Cusco, but as much as I loved Cusco, obviously, I think Jasper's story is handled just a little bit better. He has this kind of charming awkwardness, especially when he's nervous and starts to rumble, and overall I find him weirdly entertaining. Also, one thing that I really want to mention that I don't see talked about enough and is strangely important to me is how smart Jasper is. He knows what he's doing when he uses his learning competence to get out of things, and his banter is just mwah, chef's kiss, honestly. He has some really clever comebacks and sarcastic remarks, and it's a huge reason why I consider his character to be so fun and satisfying to watch. He has a lot of charm and cleverness that normally you probably wouldn't expect from this kind of character. Another crucial to the story character is obviously Klaus, who was handled with a lot of care and love. It's funny how at first we see him as this intimidating and even scary figure. He doesn't talk much, mostly communicating with grunts and gestures, but the more we find out about him, the more we can empathize with him and understand why he chose this life of loneliness and isolation following his wife's death. And his backstory really helps us understand why at first he wasn't sure about helping Jasper, and how delivering gifts to children and seeing their happiness and innocence helped him heal and gave him purpose. He's just a huge sentimental guy who finds a new goal in life, and it's nice to see this revolution as he goes from someone who barely says anything and puts up walls between himself and others to gradually getting accepted, joking around with Jasper, and being a part of his own little community. It's easy to get stuck in your grief, and I think that in a sense he's a very meaningful character who shows that it's never too late to find happiness, even if it doesn't always look the way you expected it to at first. I like how both he and Jasper have these parallels between them, showing that sometimes you have to leave your comfort zone in order to truly grow and become a better version of yourself. His bond with Jasper in general is very nice to watch. They are such a unlikely duo, and yet they work so perfectly, both having a positive influence on the other. You can tell that the writers put a lot of time and care into his writing, and I love the final result. I can't really imagine a better origin story for Santa. Another character that I really wanted to discuss is Alva, because I love me some badass teacher trope, and as a teacher myself and someone who comes from a family of teachers, she means a lot to me. The idea of a teacher who came to teach in a town where people don't send their kids to school and slowly growing bitter and resentful is really hilarious to me, and I loved how they portrayed her being hesitant about teaching once children became actually interested in learning. You can easily understand why she's reluctant to go back to teaching, because she doesn't want to get hopeful in case it's only a temporary change. She represents all of the traits of a good teacher while still having a believable personality and character arc. Alva ends up using all of the funds she collected throughout the years as means to escape this place, and uses them to get children school supplies, because the thing about working with children is that you want what's best for them. And it's a nice reflection of real life where teachers will often buy treats or school supplies for kids using their own money. I know that I've done it more times than I can count. I'm strangely weak for the jaded woman trope, so her introduction was a real treat to me. I also like the fact that her relationship with Jasper never overshadows the main plot of the movie. The romance is there, but it's subtle, and it makes sense narratively because she and Jasper are two outsiders who grew to love the place and both changed it for the better. So the relationship doesn't feel like it comes out of nowhere or is there just for the sake of romance. Next, Margot. She's adorable, what else is there to say? Also, I find it fascinating that the two characters Jasper really bonds with are a little girl and an old man, and they are both essential to his character growth, even more than his actual love interests. Her presence is so important in the movie because she symbolizes the changes that Jasper goes through, from being dismissive and standoffish towards her and the others, to slowly becoming more open and loving. She doesn't say much, and what she says we can't really understand, but in a lot of ways she and Klaus are the heart of the story. Also, I loved seeing a grown-up Margot at the end of the movie still being close with Jasper and him keeping in touch with her tribe. It's really heartwarming and I love their friendship. Not to mention that it's always nice to see different cultures represented in media, so the fact that she and her tribe played a pretty significant role in the movie is a great bonus, especially since it seems like it was handled with a lot of care, like the fact that traditional Sami clothing often consists of red, yellow and blue, which is a very clear identifying trait for them in the movie. And since we are on the topic of Margot, I wanted to talk about the children in the movie because they are so important here as well. Klaus really captures why children are so important and why this childlike wonder and innocence they have is so precious and worth protecting. It's clear that the ongoing feud was harmful for the entire community, and it only makes sense that the children were the ones who suffered the most because of that. They weren't even allowed to have proper education because their parents resented the idea of two clans interacting with each other, and the cold, isolated town regularly destroyed by infighting is a horrible place to raise children. Until Jasper came along, they led rather bleak and lonely lives, and it's their happiness and kindness that is the reason behind the transformation of the town. Their happiness is what makes this healing process possible, and we see that once others take notice and follow their example, slowly the entire town gets better and starts thriving. It shows how important it is to teach children how to be kind and to let them interact with people who are different from them. That helps to create not only happier adults, but also happier communities as a whole. The movie introduces this very interesting debate about whether the kind act counts if it was committed for selfish reasons, as we know that Jasper didn't intend to truly improve the quality of life in Smirensburg and only wanted to do the work so he could go back to his old life. However, while it can be a controversial topic of discussion, I think the main message here is that even though he started his mission for selfish reasons, once he saw the positive effects of his actions, it became second nature to him. You can see how at the beginning it's all about getting as many letters as possible, but as time goes on, he stops referencing his goal as much as before, especially when he sees other people get inspired by his actions. And the same goes for children. What started as a way to get free gifts ends up being a genuine and permanent change that completely transforms the town over time. A once miserable and torn by conflict place turns into a supportive and loving community where people look out for each other and share the resources to make everyone's life better. The same way that violence and hatred were seen as natural before, being kind and supportive can become a habit. The more you do it, the more it becomes the norm. Kindness is contagious. Experiencing an act of kindness can do wonders to our mood, and it improves our quality of life. And if someone does something kind to you, you are more likely to help out someone else later. Even if it starts from a place of selfishness, as long as you do it consistently, there's a good chance that over time it will become a force of habit. Jasper starts as this immature, spoiled and overall lazy person who will actively sabotage his job in order to avoid putting in actual work, and then he consistently goes out of his way over and over again to make others happy. I think the fact that he decided to stay is really significant here. He was so used to this luxurious and lavish lifestyle when he first arrived in Smirensburg, it's hard to blame him for wanting to leave. You don't even have to be opposed to the idea of working. This place was a dump and your two only options were to either be killed by the weather and freeze to death, possibly in your own bed, or get decapitated by hatred-fueled neighbors during your morning walk. Anyways, I consider it to be a pretty nice subversion of the trope where the spoiled rich guy has to live amongst the poor, and with time he begins to appreciate this kind of life more and more. Smirensburg is a genuinely miserable place to live in, and the perspective of potentially getting killed or losing a limb because of feuding neighbors doesn't feel very appealing. It's not a story about Jasper realizing that simple and hardworking life has its value. Obviously this also eventually happened, but it's more of a side effect of his character growth and the change that he specifically brings to this place. There's not really much that I can tell you about the animation other than the fact that it's absolutely visually stunning. Everything just works together so nicely. The amazing character designs, which have a lot of cartoonish charm and allow for a variety of fun facial expressions, the fact that every character is so unique and that they have individual tics, such as Jasper having a tendency to touch his face when he's in deep thought. And then there's absolutely beautiful hand-drawn animation with the addition of 3D textures and lighting that really makes every scene feel so full of life. And the backgrounds are just so visually breathtaking. I'm actually using one as my wallpaper right now. I wasted half an hour working on this video just looking at different shots from the movie because they are so beautiful and I could stare at them for hours. I don't really have the language needed to properly explain all the great things they did to make this movie look as amazing as it does. All I can really say that whatever it does in the best possible way, and I would love to see more movies using similar techniques, especially now when 2D animation isn't as common as it used to be. Insider has a great video explaining the process and I highly recommend checking it out. I'll drop it in the description below if anyone's interested. Klaus really found this middle ground between 2D and 3D, and it's amazing to see how it managed to combine the best aspects of both techniques and created something new and unique. When I say that Klaus is magical, I don't really mean it in a sense that it's a story about magic. There's no mention of magic or supernatural elements at any point in the movie, and while the ending with Klaus fading away and then coming back every year on Christmas night might be interpreted as magic, it's open-minded enough that everyone can come to their own conclusions. What I mean when I say that Klaus is magical is that it perfectly encapsulates the spirit of Christmas, whether you are religious or not. It explains perfectly why this holiday is considered to be the time of warmth and kindness. I consider watching it to be almost like a sort of religious experience. You can tell that there's been a lot of love and care put into the process of making this movie, and it shows. Every second is filled with so much attention to detail just to deliver a truly beautiful and exceptional story. The scene when Klaus and Jasper bring a gift to the little Saminger is one of the most beautiful scenes I have ever watched, and I would lie if I told you that I don't cry every single time I see it. Recording and editing this video is proving to be exceptionally difficult because I get very emotional at certain scenes and end up getting distracted. Anyways, when the music swells and we see Margot laughing, it really conveys everything about why being kind to each other is so important, especially if it involves children. I don't think any other story deserves the title of a Christmas classic as much as this movie does. It's an incredibly touching tale about friendship, kindness and growth, and I can't imagine a better movie to watch during cold winter nights. There are some little things that I would maybe change, especially regarding the whole liar revealed trope when everyone finds out why Jasper really came here and it's revealed that his motivations were hardly as pure or selfless as they thought. It didn't make sense for others to get as upset as they were, and the whole chasing scene following his return felt a bit longish. I also didn't care much for the inclusion of these two giant kids falling in love and their marriage ending this whole conflict between the two clans. It felt a bit forced and like it got way more screen time than it deserved, but these are very minor complaints and the inclusion of these elements doesn't affect my enjoyment of the movie or change how I view its message. It's a solid, well-written piece of fiction with gorgeous animation, great music, amazing voice acting, and a heartfelt moral that really highlights the importance of a loving community and kindness. I can't recommend it enough, and I hope that we'll get more movies using this combination of 2D and 3D animation because Klaus shows that not only is it possible, but it can also lead to truly amazing results and highlights the strength of both mediums. If you somehow haven't seen Klaus yet, I have no idea what you are still doing here. Just do yourself a favor and go watch it. I really wish I could experience this movie for the first time one more time. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you love Klaus as much as I do in the comments below, and feel free to let me know what you thought about this movie. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks again and see you next time!